Welcome to Florida, the sinkhole capital of the world. It's an issue that many people never think about until it's too late. But if you're buying or selling property, well, you can't afford to overlook it. Natural sinkholes happen when acidic rainwater seeps down through surface soil and gets to something like sandstone or limestone, which dissolves over time. And eventually, the land can't support its own weight. It collapses. And it's not just Florida. Last year, 8 Corvettes were damaged after being devoured by a 30-foot deep sinkhole at the National Corvette Museum in Kentucky. Imagine coming to find that damage. Sinkholes have wreaked havoc across the country: Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Pennsylvania. Now, sinkholes don't get as much attention as natural disasters like earthquakes or hurricanes because many of them are localized, but they can cause just as much damage. Florida has more sinkholes than any other state. There have been more than 15,000 verified sinkholes across the state.
Florida has what people call a Swiss cheese geology. We have a limestone bedrock underneath the state, and there's an aquifer. Over time, the rock is dissolved by the acidity in groundwater. It creates caverns and voids that when the surface can't support it, they collapse.
A few months ago, this Florida sinkhole reappeared 2 years after it opened up under the bedroom of a 37-year-old Jeffrey Bush. He was sucked tragically into the 20-foot sinkhole with his entire bedroom and died before he could be rescued. I'm standing by Lake Rose in Winter Park, Florida. It's named after May Rose Williams. Her house was here until May of 1981 when the ground opened up and swallowed it. What happened here, which is now all water? Tell us the story behind it, please.
May says she was looking out her window, saw a sycamore tree in her front yard disappear into the ground, and she realized that there was trouble. It took with it a 3-bedroom home, a luxury car dealership with about 5 Porsches and a truck, half of the city's Olympic-sized swimming pool, a portion of the street, and caused about $4 million worth of damage.
It grew to 320 feet wide, 90 feet deep, and even became a tourist attraction until the city filled it in.
Florida's laws changed in about 2011. It was in response to what was seen as runaway abuse of insurance when it came to sinkholes. Insurance companies were paying out hundreds of millions of dollars in claims and taking in a fraction of that in their premiums. So the legislators responded, they changed the laws, and now a lot of people think that the pendulum has swung way too far in the other direction because sinkhole claims are incredibly hard to make.
Florida state law requires insurers to cover catastrophic ground cover collapse.
And those are the really extreme cases that you hear about, and there's 4 criteria for that type of coverage. You have to have an abrupt collapse of the ground, a depression that is visible to the naked eye. You have to have damage to the structure, including the foundation of the building, and the property has to be deemed uninhabitable, so it's condemned.
2 years ago, a 60-foot wide sinkhole opened up underneath the Summer Bay Resort near Disney World. Amazingly, a security guard heard some creaking, saw a window break, and the building was evacuated before it all collapsed. Outside of that, sinkhole damage is not covered unless your policy specifically includes it.
They can offer it, but they don't have to provide it, and that typically comes at a higher premium, which is prohibitively expensive for a lot of property owners.
A lot of states, you have a disclosure form. Is there a statement on there, has there been a sinkhole problem?
Yes, so on residential disclosure forms, you'll find this most typically. It will have whether you know of any sinkhole activity or whether there's any reported on your property. But Florida statutes require a certain level of disclosure from sellers as well. So if you've made a claim to your insurance company and your insurance company has paid that claim, you have to disclose that fact along with how much of that money you spent to actually repair the sinkhole damage. I always encourage people who are purchasing a piece of property to look for that specific disclosure, and if it's not provided on the forms you're given, to mandate that the seller tells you whether they know of or have reported any sinkhole activity to their insurance company.
A federal grand jury recently convicted a Florida couple of wire fraud for pocketing a $153,000 settlement and then quietly selling their home.
They made a claim, they were paid on that claim, and then they only made cosmetic repairs to the home, sold it, and didn't check the box that, yes, there has been sinkhole activity.
So, if you're representing a seller, what would you be telling them as their lawyers to what they should do?
During a due diligence or inspection period phase, anytime you're going to purchase a property, You want to first make sure that there are sinkhole disclosures in any of those closing documents that you're going to have. You want to also make sure that your property is even insurable. Make sure you can get coverage, especially when you're in those areas that have these high rates of sinkholes. Sometimes mortgage lenders will require that an inspection is done on a property, but that generally isn't performed by a licensed geologist. It's typically by contractors that they've hired. So you can have other types of testing done, but that can be prohibitively expensive. Yeah. If you make a claim with your insurance company and they send out somebody to inspect the area, and if they find sinkhole activity, that engineer's report is going to be filed in the county clerk of courts. So you can find those on a title search or a public record search, whether there's been any filings against your property, because it is tied to the legal description and the owner's name, whether there are sinkhole claims that have been made and how much has been paid out on it.
So a buyer, in their due diligence, should probably get either a capable lawyer like yourself or do some due diligence, get the title report done from an escrow company.
Absolutely.
Make sure you understand what's going on the property, what the history is, so if you're going to go in and buy,
correct,
you have the knowledge and you have the risk.
Yes, you want to get on top of property insurance, title insurance. That way you can find out what type of risks that you're going to undertake when you do own this property.